And a very good evening, everybody, and welcome to another one of our Saturday night information and talk nights. Great pleasure to see the return of a lovely lady who gave us a wonderful talk back last September. Seems another lifetime, doesn't it, Diana?
It does, very much, yeah.
But during that talk, somebody put forward the question about the Ogham, and you said, "Oh, I'll come back and I'll talk about that." So I bet you wish you didn't now.
Yeah. You know when you say things and you wish you hadn't opened your mouth, but yes,
I know, yeah.
it's a pleasure being back. It's a pleasure being here.
Oh, it's an absolute delight to have you with us tonight. And the topic of this evening is the Ogham. Now, I am a totally empty vessel on this. I did Google, went through a few things and thought, I'm none the wiser.
Okay.
So if I could hand over to you, please, just give a little outline to everybody and what this is.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you've the pronunciation is perfect. Ogham. It's spelt Ogham, but it's actually a silent G, so it's actually pronounced Ogham, and it is a very broad and deep topic. And I'm not surprised when you said that you did a bit of research and you were none the wiser, because one of the first things I want to say really is that even amongst the most learned scholars, there isn't a definitive agreement about its origins, its purpose. There are some really good people out there that have done a lot of research about it, and we can go into aspects, but there is not a definitive, if you like. There's a general understanding, but depending on which teacher you go to, you might learn different aspects of it in a slightly different way. So I hope that makes sense.
It does, and it makes me feel a lot better.
Oh, good. Well, I like to give people a bit of comfort, and just sort of saying good, sort of, hello to everybody that's signing on. Oh, and hello, Sue. I know Sue Townsend, and she knows the Ogham because I think she was here for the Ogham. I think one of her sort of times with me. So what I want to do, it's really, before even going into any depths, is to try and give you everybody like a broad brush stroke. But let me tell you my journey with trees, because that's what this is about. It's about trees and the energy of trees and the encoded wisdom and the knowledge. They are, if we actually consider it, they are the tallest and largest beings on the planet. It doesn't take much to even think of the giant redwoods in California. They are the tallest sort of beings on the planet right now. So my journey began when, at least a decade, maybe 12 years ago. I've always had a connection with trees, but I didn't necessarily understand it. And there was a particular tree or trees that I would go when I was walking my dog. And I would always lean against a particular tree, which was an oak tree. And I would often, as I would be approaching this oak tree, I would actually see an image of a face in the trunk of the tree. Didn't think anything of it particularly. My spiritual journey, it was progressing. I was already a Reiki teacher, etc. So I understood that at an energetic level. But it wasn't until I actually was on a bit of a girly weekend away in the Cotswolds, and a friend, one of the girls that came along to that weekend, had the book Earth Wisdom by Glennie Kindred. Now, I'm sure that many of your listeners will probably be familiar with Glennie's work. And in that book, she'd left it on the coffee table, and I happened to open it, and it fell open on the page of an illustration of an oak tree, and the image in it was exactly the image that I had seen on my walk. So it really piqued my interest. And that was where I started to look at, well, what is this about? What is the Ogham? And if people want to do a bit more research, I mean, Glennie Kindred, her work, I think, is fabulous. So she would be a good starting point and a good port of call to explore some of this even further. So what do we actually mean by the Ogham? It's, gosh, I mean, it's really challenging to know where to start. It's a system of wisdom, language, knowledge, healing. It encompasses all those aspects. And really, it goes back. How far does it go back? Well, this is where some scholars agree and some scholars don't. The oldest known Ogham script is actually still visible in certain stone circles around the British Isles. So that's probably the oldest known images and markings. And in the background behind me, you can see that I've got one of my drums that I think I referred to last time, and that's got the image, or the Ogham image, for Blackthorne on it. And I will be touching on Blackthorne in a little while. So it's a script. In terms of what is the living manuscripts that are still surviving as of today, the oldest one is probably, I think it's called the Ballymode Script, and I think that's housed in Dublin University. I'm pretty sure it's Dublin. So that's when the medieval scribes were literally using it as a writing system. And it's based on the 20 or 25, and again, this is where there's a difference of opinion, native trees to the British Isles. Each one has its own energy signature, and I'm sure that a lot of listeners, Laurie, are familiar with, our own energy systems, exactly the same way that trees have an energy system, and each tree species has a unique energy signature. So, oh, thank you. Someone's put, the trio and Glennie Kindred. Thank you. Yep. And so it can be an alphabet. It was the Celtic language. So each tree has a certain letter associated with it, and its other associations are related to the time of year, the qualities of that tree, and the planet. There have to be planetary links as well. So it's a whole host, and encompassed within that is the wisdom that you can find as an individual. My personal journey has been, and I can only speak from my own personal experience, is that I've really only scratched the surface of this. Mm-hmm. I met a wonderful man a number of years ago from New Zealand. He's living in the UK, and he was actually a homeopath, but he loved trees and was working with. He was actually discovering his own shamanic journey as well, and he wanted to spend time studying each tree. And what he said, in terms of understanding that he is a homeopath, so he understands energy, he felt that he would need to study shamanically and energetically each tree for at least a year. Now, when you consider, that's what you call a tree connection, studying each tree for a single tree a year. Bearing in mind that the main body of Ogham is based on 20 trees, he was looking at a body of work that was going to last 20 years. Now, I am sure that within that time frame, he would. I don't know whether he's still doing that. We're not in contact now, but to me, that shows you the depth of information and knowledge that is absolutely encoded and ingrained within each tree. And I'm sure that many people will probably agree that who doesn't like sitting under a tree? And it isn't just about on a hot summer's day. We all feel better when we're sitting, and just enjoying the tree's energy. One of the things that I do in my workshops is that we have what's called a tree connection, where we go and meet the dryad. Now, the dryad is just the term for a tree spirit. Much like us, each tree has its own spirit. And we go and have a connection. And I teach people how to approach a tree. Again, like us, everything has an energy field. So we talk about the layers of that energy field. And like us, they have what I call that universal, that outer energy field, which is the link between the tree and the universe. I've actually got that down here. I call it the spiritual layer, that very, very fine energy. So when we always get into that zone where we're, as a group, we walk, and then we get to a point where I say, right, now each step you take, this is a great exercise for listeners to do. Find your favorite tree and do this. Is as you approach a tree, just drop into your energy, your heart center. And it's that you'll know when you've crossed into that spiritual layer, because you'll feel that difference with the energy. It's a very, very fine layer. And then as you approach the tree, just do it very slowly. It's not about rushing up to a tree and smacking it on the trunk and saying, "Hi, how you doing?" It's just it's you walk slowly and steadily, and then as you become closer, and I can't tell you exactly how many feet away from the trunk that would be. It depends on the age of the tree, it depends on the species, it depends on a whole host of things. But as you approach the tree, then you'll start to go through what I call, you'll enter that another layer, and I call that the memory layer. Now that is, you'll feel there's a different quality to the energy. Some people find it denser, some people find it buzzier. It's really the memory of all trees across the planet. It's not just the memory of that species of tree, but it's the memory of all the trees. And I find that that's a great space, or that layer is a great space in which to sit and commune if you're looking to gain understanding on the bigger picture about trees generally. Then, if you're looking to make a contact with this particular tree, you can then continue towards the tree, and you get to the etheric layer, which is in the same way that our etheric layer, which is the blueprint for the physicality of the being. Then the tree also has that. And that's when you can start to reach out. And that is often, to do this in a mindful way, as a spiritual practice. When you get to that layer, it's almost like, those of you that are healers out there will understand that you can visibly feel that through your hands, that etheric layer. And it's always, always about seeking permission. Can I connect with you? And then putting your hand on the trunk of the tree. That is my mindful walk in terms of having a connection with a particular tree. So I highly recommend this to everybody. Go and pick your tree. It could be in the garden, it could be in a park, it could be anywhere. So I hope that really gives you just an overview of the different layers of the tree, and how we can connect.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, does that make
That makes perfect sense. I've just got visions now of everybody tomorrow just sort of like out in the park or anything, and stopping and then sauntering up to a tree, which is wonderful. And I love the different layers as well. I think that's definitely going to try that.
Yes. I mean, and it's, do you know what is so interesting is when you do this with a group, what each individual picks up from that. Because there'd be different information relative to maybe to that person, or it could be that they've picked up on a different message. It isn't just that a tree has one specific message. It could be, it might be information regarding trees generally. It could be information regarding that specific tree's journey. So it's wonderful in afterwards is having that conversation with people to find out what their discoveries are about that tree and that experience. So, I mean, it's a lovely idea. I can just imagine, say, people trying it tomorrow over the next couple of days, and no doubt getting then YouTube clips of people doing, why are people walking slowly toward trees? I can just see that taking off on Twitter or something in these crazy times. So I'm off to the park tomorrow. Good on you, Julie. But I don't know how much people already know about Ogham. So I'm just going to speak about the actual, I think what I want to do is, it's the the main trees of the lunar calendar. And when I say it's because I mentioned right at the top that trees are sort of, if you like, encoded or put round the wheel of the year. And again, this is where some scholars differ. Some, and the most common way, is that the trees are split up according to the 12-month calendar or the zodiac signs. Okay, and that each tree would relate to a 2 or 3 week period, and then it would be 10th of January to 30th of January or whatever, and then it would go on to the next tree, and that would then make up the wheel of the year. But I particularly was really interested when I did my shamanic training, and I actually dug this out earlier today if I can find it, is some information. It's not typical, so as I want to look for it, it's disappeared. Oh, here it is.
It sounds like my desk.
Yeah. Oh, well, apparently Albert Einstein had a very messy desk. So I always say it's a sign of a genius, right? Okay. So it's actually based, and this is apparently the oldest native British tree lunar calendar. And it was developed by a guy called Dusty Miller, who was a shaman. And it's the main tree spirits or dryads that our native shamans of the Celtic British Isles would be working with. So what I'm going to do is just very briefly go round that. So remember that the lunar cycle is 13 cycles per year, as I'm sure your listeners are already aware. So I'm going to just go around that as a calendar. And it'll just be interesting to see which, listeners, whether you resonate with a particular one, and anything I say may, come to you as to why it's always of interest to you. So this does differ from a lot of the Ogham scholars and their, the 12-month calendar. And the reason I like the lunar calendar, before I explain, is that before the 12-month calendar was developed and introduced, what would our native peoples have, how would they have marked the year? And it would have been by the 13 lunar cycles. So this is definitely, I think, the oldest original way in which our native ancestors would have been using and working with trees. So the first one is birch. In the Celtic language, it's known as Beth. And it relates to the longest night, so it would be on the solstice. It's a time of birth. That's when we, just before the rebirth of the sun, etc. The time of birth of the soul. It's a tree of purity and has feminine energy. The next one is rowan, relating to the element of ice. It's about protection, movement of energy, but a deeper retreat into ourselves as a human being. The next one is ash. Now, this one I found interesting because I work with ash quite a lot in my drum birthing workshops. Relates to the element snow, again, a tree of purity and cleansing and balancing mind, body, spirit. And I would actually say that's very true. Ash is a key to help unlocking the mind. And I think particularly at this time of what we're all going through is when, we're being mentally challenged with what's going on. Is this a good time to start working with ash? Okay. It's sometimes difficult to identify trees, particularly when they're all, bare, and it's more challenging when there's no leaves and foliage. But ash is quite an easy one to recognize because it has like a 3-pronged bud, and it almost looks like a deer print. It has a sticky 3-pronged bud, and so it's quite easy to identify even at this time of year. So what you can work with the energy of ash, and maybe we can go into that particular one a bit later. Following on from ash, we've got alder, which is all about watery elements and relates to the healing of the physical body. And for me, that's all about flow as well, allowing things to flow. And of course, when we're healing, we do need to allow that to flow through our physical bodies. Moving on, we have Willow, which is related to spring, and it's the awakening, the enchantment, and that's related to our emotional journey. Now, I mean, I just find this interesting, going back to how our native shamans would be working with this and the emotions. And bearing in mind, just looking at the drum behind me, I know that's got Blackthorne, but each tree Ogham has its unique symbol. And I cannot say for sure, but my intuition, my sense of knowing tells me that our ancestors would have been working with these symbols in a not just as a form of written language, but as an energetic symbol to help people. For example, when we come on to oak, oak is related to strength and courage and durability. And I've always had this sense that in a village, if there was somebody who was needed to face courage, that the wise woman, the priestess, or the druid priest, or whatever, would have perhaps imbued the symbol of oak onto that person, because energetically that person would have been imbued with courage and strength and wisdom or fortitude to get through a difficult time. So that's one of the things that I think is how working with Ogham can really help. Like a lot of other magical symbols, it's not just about written stuff, it's about working with stuff energetically. Anyway, moving on from Willow, we then go to Hawthorne, which again is about growth. Now, Hawthorne, we think of May and everything. Again, so it's about fertility, it's about the feminine, it's about the rising fertility of the land and embracing everything coming into life. And of course, Hawthorne was used traditionally for the maypole as well. So I think that's quite a common thing that's known. Then we do come on to oak, which is about connecting to your inner spirit and your intention. It's not just about courage, but it's about planting your intention. What is your vision? And really going deep within that, bringing out that courage and fortitude to bring your intention out into the physical realm. Then we move on to holly, which is related to flower, as in, flowers that grow, not the flour you cook with. So it's interesting because although it's related to flower, it has a masculine energy. It harmonizes and it heals the whole of the energy field. So, but it has more movement. It's not a passive energy. It's imbued with movement. So I find that really interesting. Then we move on to, because I've had to write these down because this is a very uncommon calendar, this. Hazel.
I think I found a copy of it, which we could share, perhaps.
Yep.
Tell me if it's wrong.
Well, I love all your little research. I mean, I would show you mine, but mine's got scribbles all over it. Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, it's very similar. After hazel, I've got apple. Not quite. It's similar to that, but it's not identical. But you see, this is really interesting, Laurie, because this is a classic example of, depending on which scholar you go to and where you get the information from, there are going to be variations. And for me, it's not about a question of what's right or wrong. It's about what these scholars have learned from this and how they perceive it to fit into their worldview. So, I mean, I think they're all right in that sense. So hazel, I'll just talk about hazel. That's related to, well, here it's got lightning. It's tree of inspiration, of knowledge, of knowing, of gnosis. And where it's lightning, it can strike like lightning. Now, we all know that when we get that flash of knowing, it does feel like a lightning bolt. And you don't know how you know, but you know. So that's all about hazel. So working with hazel is really good. I mean, and hazel, of course, it's a very bendable wood, very bendable branches. And I mean, I create things with wood, and hazel is a brilliant one if you're pruning it or whatever, is you can create dream catchers with that, and that's beautiful because you can bend it and create something with that. And just working with a few twigs, it provides the inspiration. So at every level, the trees, you are working with the energy of a particular wood. So after hazel comes apple, but this, in terms of this particular system, is the crabapple. And interestingly, we do have a crabapple tree out in our driveway, and it's just had its most incredible, just laden with fruit. And it's about reaping what you've sown, the tree of love. And of course, we think of the Garden of Eden, and and the apple, etc. To give an apple is to give love. So that you can work with, if you like, that in your spiritual working. Now, Blackthorne. Well, I would like to talk a little about Blackthorne because it has. I do have a strong association with it. It's a keeper of secrets. It hunts down what is hidden. It pierces through the illusion to face our ultimate fear. Now, the thing with fear, and I think this is very relevant in the current climate, fear immobilizes us. It stops us from taking action. And it's also a very low vibration, and it leaks energy from us. And when we think about what is humanity's greatest fear, is death. So working with Blackthorne is understanding that we can get to look beyond the fear, and that it helps us to see who we truly are as a human being. It helps us to understand our immortal soul at soul level, and therefore relinquishes the fear that immobilizes us. And interesting, the other reason, thank you for bringing the screen back up to show the Blackthorne drum. My personal journey with Blackthorne has been through a shamanic healing I received, where I was taken to a battlefield where I was a druid priestess, and I had that symbol. I'd marked that symbol, and I was involved in a battle because the druid priestesses were in the front line of battles as much as the men were. After the healing, the healer told me I need to work with Blackthorne, and I went to find a Blackthorne wand, and I hadn't realised and that day when I was looking around for a Blackthorne wand, 3 shots or 3 times I heard somebody say the phrase or the location of Anglesey, and I couldn't understand what the link was. When I looked it up, and again it was Glennie Kindred's book that was the real turning point for me. In it, she describes the battle Anglesey between the Druids and the Romans, when the Romans actually slaughtered the last of the Druids. And what had kept them out of Anglesey for so long was the fact that there had been a huge blackthorn thicket in the way, or because the thorns are poisonous. I mean, it creates an impenetrable barrier, and that's what had helped the Druids stay there for as long as possible. So I knew that I needed to get Blackthorne, and it's always been with me ever since. But interestingly, what other associations has Blackthorne got? When I started looking into this, the Irish, for example, it's a very dense, heavy wood. The Irish made them into cudgels to beat each other up with. Right, and you know that we can understand that really, and it became to be considered as a symbol of power over others, because it was like something you could use as a weapon over others and beating up. And as I mentioned, the thorns are lethal. They can cause septicemia, and they were allegedly used by witches in the Middle Ages to help throw curses at other people. You know, so it's interesting, the association. And yet even today there is an association with Blackthorne that people aren't probably aware of. In the UK, the state opening of Parliament every year, Black Rod goes along, doesn't he, and bashes on the door 3 times with his black rod. Well, the wands that the witches used in the Middle Ages were known as black rods or blasting rods, and they were considered powerful symbol over others. So even today, in our modern times, that legacy still stands because he's known as Black Rod.
Yeah.
So those fairy tales do have, you know, there's always an element of truth that weaves through our history. Each tree has its history and its knowledge. So, so I'm sorry if I went off piece there, but Blackthorne, there's just so much about Black. I mean, I could do a whole evening just on Blackthorne.
Careful, you know what happened the last time you
offered. Yeah, no, don't volunteer so much, Di. Right, okay. Right, then we move on very quickly. The last 2 of this particular circle is elder, which relates to the autumn or fall, the leaf fall in the US. It's the tree of vision and of letting go. I mean, obviously the leaves fall off there. It's a classic way of learning how to let go of things. But it's also a way of psychic visioning, discovering prophetic dreams of what will be, scrying, seeing into the future. Part of that is letting go and envisioning what the future will be. And then the last one is you, which is always the tree of death and rebirth. Most prominent in churchyards all around the country, as I think most people are familiar with. It's a primary healer, even though every part of the tree is poisonous. It's completing that cycle. And then you go, and then that would bring you back to Birch, which is always about new beginnings. At the beginning, you know, the solstice, and then the returning of the light and the sun. So you can just see that whole journey around the wheel of the year. And I just love this particular lunar aspect. So I hope, I mean, I don't know how that fits with people. I'd love to have people's feedback on that. I just must have a slurp.
I found that totally fascinating, and especially with the Blackthorne reference there, because we were talking just before we went live, and saying that all these thoughts are going around the world and all intermingled, and one of them at the moment is about people working with their shadow selves, confronting their own fears.
Yes. Absolutely. And Blackthorne, the thing you have to do if you're going to work with Blackthorne, it's a very high vibration. It's about being totally honest with yourself. It cannot be fooled with Blackthorne. It's again, which is why if it cannot be used, and not that in any sort of magical workings or working with energy should you be, you know, throwing curses at people. But Blackthorne, by heck, you do not want to even think ill will of anybody when you're working with Blackthorne, because that will come back and rebound on you 3-fold. It's about being totally honest. And this is what I mean about facing our shadow, being totally honest. What is our shadow? What is it? What's my biggest fear? What is coming up for me to be acknowledged? But getting beyond that, you can then, once you've moved through that and understood who you are, it opens up a doorway to, and that's why I call it the Keeper of Secrets. It just floods your intuitive, the pineal gland, everything. It just floods you with so much knowledge. And because it's a very, very high vibration, Blackthorne. So it's just be careful what you wish for, because it will come back at you. That's what I'm going to say. So a very, very powerful energy. I took this drum along to a drum. Well, it was to a drum workshop where, I mean, there were loads of people, and we were learning about different techniques about playing drums. And the people leading it, because I mean, we went round and just sort of introduced our drums, and I held it up and she said, "Oh my goodness, that's a powerful drum." So Blackthorne is very powerful, but it just pierces through any illusion. Like it's thorn, it just pierces through. So it's for very, if you like, experienced. It's not a fluffy one like a hazel and loving and kind. It's like, boom, I'm going to show you what the truth is now.
Right, noted.
Yeah, noted. Okay, so what I've got here in my little goodie bag, I hope you can all hear that, is what I call the Ogham staves. Right, straight to the point. Something. Yeah. How best can we work with Blackthorne flower essences or other means? Right. Okay. Well, one of the ways you can work with it, I'm just about to show you when I can find it. Let me just hold these up. They're little staves or sticks, and each one has the relevant Ogham symbol on it. You can buy these from spiritofold.co.uk, I think it is. Is the wood frame of your drum made? No, the wood frame is actually ash, believe it or not, and the hide is stag hide. I work with wild culled stag hide for my drums. In fact, the symbol on that drum wasn't there for about 3 years. It was only I started working with Blackthorne, and that's when I put the symbol on it. Actually, well, right now it doesn't matter which one I hold up. So this particular set of Ogham staves is engraved, or I think like pyrography, is burnt on the individual symbol. What makes this set particularly lovely is that each one is on the relevant wood. So you can see that I'm picking up different woods. And I think that's lovely because not only have you got the symbol for the relevant tree, but you've actually holding a piece of that tree. And that's why I like this particular set from Spirit of Old. So in terms of working with them, you can, for example, like you would with a rune or something, you could have them in a bag and you could select, or like an oracle card, you can work with them at an oracle level. So you could pick a stave out for the day. What is the one I need today? So you can work with them that way, and that's relevant not just to Blackthorne but to any of them. And then you'd look at the key associations with that. What is it I need to know today to help me work with that? And what is relevant for what is going on in my life at this moment that makes that important? I've just I don't really know why I just had. I mean, it's interesting. Someone's mentioned about pine cones on sycamore wings and beech seeds. So I love that. Yes, pine cones. Now that's interesting. In Native American wisdom, pine cones are really protective. I've actually got a pine cone that sits on my bed head, and that's actually very protective through dream time. Pine cones. So, and I have my other favorite tree is like pine fir. So, yeah, that, and also pine is a very cleansing tree. So, I think it's great if you've got any physical ailments that are just taking a bit, just lingering perhaps a bit, and you need to just try and clear that. The pine cone, holding a pine cone, can just sometimes help to, if you like, just shift that last bit of illness that might be lingering. So that's a really good way of working with pine. Beech, it's interesting because beech isn't included in the main 20 trees. I've had this discussion with a lot of people about why certain trees are included and why certain trees aren't. It's certainly included, I think, is either 20 trees or 25 trees, depending again on the scholar that you choose. And it is included in some of them, but it's not one that I particularly work with. Beech trees are, when I've connected with beech trees, they are very They don't like other trees around them. They like to be with their own kind, which I find really interesting. Most trees, when you sit, like a mixed woodland or something, trees don't generally live for themselves. It's a community. They're living for each other. But beech is just a very interesting tree, I think, because it just likes to be on its own. So make of that what you will. It's not one that I particularly work with. You've got this, yeah, stag hide. How do the Ogham trees hold full new moon energies? That's a very good question. I'm not sure that they don't necessarily hold full or new moon energies. I think really the full moon is just enhances and brings out their energies more. But I think it's quite a synergistic process with trees and the moon, and I don't think they particularly hold the moon in the same regard, if you like, that we hold the moon. They don't have that view of the moon we do, because it is just all part of the cycle. So I think their perspective about it is very different from a human's perspective. That's what I would say. Horse chestnut conkers, that isn't included in the album, but as a complete aside, working with horse chestnut, because I have a horse chestnut tree out the back, which is absolutely full of conkers every year. And last autumn, for the first time, I turned the conkers into laundry detergent, believe it or not, because it's got the saponins, which is the basis for soap. And it absolutely makes the most brilliant laundry detergent, which I've only just finished using, and we're now February. So I made enough to last me to use for laundry till February. The horse chestnut isn't included in the Ogham. I don't think any scholar actually includes the horse chestnut, interestingly. Right, so I was actually looking at these staves, wasn't I, and how to work with them. So you could pick one as an oracle for the day. You could also do a reading where, and this is what I do with groups that come here, is do a spread where you could have 3, and a bit like again an oracle spread, it would be past, present, future. So you could work with it that way. But equally, I would suggest the best way, if you've got a bag of staves, or you purchase them, is to simply meditate before even picking one, and just ask the question, which tree do I need to work with at this time? And then select one to work with for a month. And I think this will then give you, because I'm only scratching the surface here in terms of what is possible, and it's impossible in just a brief talk to go into depth with 20 trees. But if you were to select one Ogham and work with it every day for a month, you will gain so much value from that. You can look at all the different scholars and everything. What I might do, so I'm just going to put that aside, is just look at my so I'm going to look at the key associations, and I'm going to quickly run through them, because then if people want to if there's a particular tree that you love, a particular wood, then as I say, you can just write down the associations. I mean, this is what some of the stuff that I work through with people. I show them how to write each symbol. I can't do that in this type of talk, and because they're the 20 trees are split into 4 groups of 5, and then I show you how to write it. So that's all included in my workshop. But what I'm going to do is just quickly run through the 20 trees and what the associated custom and legend is, the associated planet and element, and its main meaning. So I'm going to whiz through these, so get your pens at the ready. So if there's one that you love, just get ready.
And don't forget, everybody, you can rewatch this on YouTube or the church Facebook page, so don't fret if you lag behind.
Yeah. I'll come. Can you highlight Hayley's question, and I'll come back to that shortly. Right. I'm going to start with Birch. It's known as Lady of the Woods, and it's associated with the planet Venus and the element of water. And as I've already mentioned, it's always about new beginnings and clearing away old patterns. Rowan. It's also known as mountain ash, wild ash, can't speak, witchbane or witchwood. Now think about that in terms of our history and our native peoples. It's associated with the sun and the element of fire, and it's a protection against enchantment, and it gives intuitive insight. Alder. The custom associated with this is that the dye from the wood was used to weave, and when the magical intent was woven into cloth, that's where that weaving intention into cloth came from. It has a strong dye. It's associated with Venus and the element of water, and it's a protective shield for spiritual warriors. Good one to be working with at the moment, I would say. Right, Willow. I think it's quite a commonly understood that this is where we get the painkiller, or the source of the painkiller aspirin from Willow. I can't even say it, salicylic acid. It's associated with the moon and the element of water, feminine energy. Ash. Now, ash, I'd say I could do a whole workshop on that as well. From the shamanic tradition, it represents the world tree in the Northern European legend, and the legend of Odin and the Vikings, and that's where we got the runes from. Associated with the sun and the element of water, fate and divine process, key to universal truth. That I use ash a lot in my drum making workshops, because it's a reaction. Every action has a reaction. Its inner and outer worlds are linked. And for a drum, when you're birthing a shamanic medicine tool, you need that link to the physical and the spiritual realms. Right, the next one, Hawthorne. As I mentioned, the May Hawthorne, Beltane, that's its custom and legend, related to Mars and the element of fire. And it's cleansing, it releases blocked energy. And I think my gut feeling on that is it's about movement as well. It's the spring, the Beltane, particularly the fire ceremonies, it's about movement and dancing, and therefore it releasing all the stuck energy that's within us. Oak, sacred to the Druids, of course. In the Celtic language, it comes from Duir, D-U-I-R, which is relates to a doorway to other realms. Relates to Jupiter and the element of earth, strength, courage, endurance, solid protection, and self-determination. Again, another one particularly useful at this moment. Holly. The tradition is that no branch should be cut from a holly tree, but pulled free in a manner fit for a sacred tree. So a very reverent tree. I've got a holly tree just opposite us. And it is about, it's just one of those ones, if you think about the holly leaves, very prickly by nature, is just be very respectful and mindful about it. Relates to the planet Mars and the element of fire, about clear wisdom and unconditional love. Hazel, always regarded as magical, relating to Mercury and the element of air, divination, deep listening, intuition. I'm really rushing through now because we got, I'm not even halfway through this.
That's fine.
Oh, gosh. that hasn't printed off very well. Sorry, I'll have to come back. I am missing one, but I will come back to that. That hasn't printed off. Right, now this one, bramble or vine, again, depending on the scholar, there's a difference. Sacred to the British goddess, the planet Saturn, and the element of water. Strong life force, self-determination, tenacity, effort. So it's about really clinging. Think of how brambles grow, for example. They cling on, they put out their, I don't know what they're called, they, you know, their things, and they really cling to the earth. So it's all about that tenacity, to the durability, to reaping what you sow, and holding on to things if you need to. Right, ivy. Ivy wrapped round upright poles were used to advertise tavern in the Middle Age Britain, which I just thought was an interesting aside. Relates to moon and the element of water. It's binding, restricting, it's attachment versus letting go. When you think about how ivy binds itself, in fact, our garden wall is only held up because of the ivy. We reckon that if we took the ivy down, the wall would collapse. And then broom, again, it could be reed, and it is the wood that traditionally witches made their brooms from, besom brooms. Relating to the sun and the element of air, and it relates to soul or astral travel. Blackthorne, well, we covered that, I won't go into that. The associated planet is Saturn and Mars, element of fire, and connection to powerful magic, but requiring deep clarity. Elder, again, it was used to make the British broomsticks. Relating to Venus and the element of earth, about transformation, renewal and regeneration. And the last group here, fir pine, which somebody mentioned earlier, the Druids burned great fires of pine at the winter solstice to draw back the sun. This led to the custom of burning the Yule log. Relating to the planet Mars and the element of air, perception and the calm viewpoint. Listening to the prompting of spirit, seeking clarity and vision through stillness. I love pine. In fact, my favourite thing is to just go and sit within some pine trees, and that is just, you could just get such a perception of everything. It's lovely. Gorse, which is, some would argue, is that a tree, a bush? But it is associated with the harvest. The Queen of the Fairy is said to hold gorse as especially sacred. Relates to Mars or the sun, element of fire. Strong desire for life, material possessions, and protective shield against negative energy. Well, when you think, if anyone's collected gorse flowers, they know how prickly how difficult it is to pick the flowers. Heather, associated, well, even it's associated with bringing good luck. Heather ale is reported to have fortified warriors before and after battle, which I found interesting. Relates to the planet Venus and the element of water, gateway between spirit and matter. Healing, outgoing, caring for others. Poplar encompasses also aspen, is used extensively by the Celts to make shields. Associated with Mercury and the element of air, listening to your inner voice and trusting yourself, linking to source and the use in spell work. And then finally yew, bringing us right back to the beginning of the year again. It was famously used to make the British longbows, of course, and they were infamous. The British British yeomen were feared because the longbow were so powerful. Wands made of yew are considered exceptionally potent because of their power to resist decay. Relates to the planet Saturn, element of earth, death and rebirth, and the never-ending cycle. So that is a whizzing through.
Well done.
20 trees and their main associations. So as Laurie said, you can listen back and then pick up whichever you want. Now, Hayley's question, where are you based? I'm based in just south of Yeovil in Somerset. And I do have my tree Ogham days are called Day of the Tree, which you can find out on my website. I am running workshops as from next month, and I've got I'm moving into that time where, like a lot of people now, we are just energizing and moving forward and standing in our power. So I will be running a Day of the Tree, and I can't recall the date off the top of my head, but if you go to my website, www.thequantumshaman.net, and then go to workshops, you'll find it all there. What I would like to say as well is that I've got some exciting things also in the pipeline, not on my website yet, but I am going to be doing some medicine wheel healing weekend, which will encompass trees or certain woods as well. It'll be going into a whole weekend of diving into not just trees, but other flora, fauna, and everything. So it'll be really sort of going deeper into this sort of stuff. And interestingly, I've also just I've been linking up with a tremendous shaman up in Northumberland, and he's going to be coming down, and I'm hosting a fire walk in July. Ooh. And if anybody, yes, so if anybody has the the call to do that, I've done one, and I've been wanting to do this for a long time, but it was finding the right person to come along and do it, and that connection has now happened, and we've only today agreed the date, so it's going to be July the 10th. Ooh. So
tempted.
Keep looking out on the website for that one, because that's going to be very, very powerful. And interestingly, bringing that back down to wood, okay, Sue, I'll put you down for that, is that obviously I've been asking him what wood he uses for obviously building, and he uses birch. So I found that really interesting because it's new beginnings. So that is going to be, we're going to be working with that energy on that evening. It's going to be an evening event. Oh yeah, Sue, if I recall, you've got a real thing about birch, if I remember. Yes. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. I'm very, very excited about that. So does anybody else have any more questions? We're already at the hour point. Honestly, it feels like I've been talking for 5 minutes. My other half will tell you.
Yeah, when you get right into a subject, the time flies.
It does, doesn't it? So does anybody have any particular burning question they would like to ask, or a particular tree that they have a question about? I think that would be interesting before I go.
Interesting one here from Julie. And I think the crux of the question is, do other countries have their own Ogham?
That is a very good question. And the honest answer is, I don't think they do. I'm not saying that native tribes don't have associations and affinity with trees, but I don't think that other countries have a system like this. It is very much a Celtic thing. Right, here we go. Certainly, I'm going to hold that up. This is about the history of Ogham, and that's the book of Ballymode that I referred to at the top of the hour, and that's the one that's housed in the library in Dublin, and it was a medieval script within the British Isles. So that isn't to say that indigenous tribes around the world probably do have their own system, but what it is called, I don't know, or what they are called. I've come across a sycamore, which tells me it's a protector tree. If you're getting, in response to Julie, because if you're getting that information from the sycamore, then I would go for it. If the forest is, if it's a protector, if it's telling you that, I would go for that. Have I come across that before? Not from sycamore, but I think at the moment, I think at this time, I think the trees are see, what we have to remember is that we are part of this flora and fauna, and the stones, the water, the rocks, the trees, the herbs, the flowers. We are all part of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And I suspect that even the trees are now saying, right, whatever their role is, they're sort of really there for it at the moment. So no, I think that's lovely. I think that's lovely if the sycamore is telling you it's a protector tree. I think it's lovely. Honestly, guys, it's just go and connect with a tree and see what message you get. That would be my recommendation. Seriously.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than experiencing yourself. You hear of other people's experience.
Sure.
On an energy level that resonates.
Absolutely, because this is what happens in my groups is, we go and have we'll go and connect with a tree, and each one will get us, although there may be an overall message, but each person will get something specific that is right for them. Oh, I love that. Perhaps beech trees consider themselves to be observers rather than participants. I like that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I resonate with that. Yes. I think you could be right on that score, actually. Yeah.
Actually,
yes.
I'm a bit of an amateur gardener, and it is common in plants. Some plants will not grow on their own. Other plants will only grow with others of the same kind, and others just go wherever.
Go wherever.
The
same is true. Yeah, go with the flow. The same is true of trees, definitely. So I hope that gives everybody a flavour. So keep an eye on. I've certainly got the Day of the Tree up on my website, and the other two events that I've mentioned, I will be posting within the next sort of. Well, I've got to get the details sorted, but it will be up in the next few weeks. So just keep a lookout for that. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I hope that has really helped everybody. And yes, before I go, there's another one. I just see these comments are lovely because it really. I want to address that. I draw my strength from my light language. Yes, interesting, because trees have helped me in understanding light language as well. So it's interesting with people around trees that definitely seems to come to the fore more and more. And I suspect that our ancestors, this is one of the reasons they would have actually been communing. This is how they would have been communing with the trees, through the light language, and therefore getting this information. And yes, it was then transcribed into these manuscripts in the Middle Ages. But I think this goes back a lot further than that, into antiquity. So yeah, I love that. I draw my strength from my light language. Thank you for that, Christiana. That's lovely.
A quick question from me. Would the season and when you approach a tree make a difference? So if I were to go to an oak in spring and then in winter, would I feel a difference there?
Only in that if it was winter, it would probably take slightly longer to connect, because it's more dormant as opposed to its rising energy. But equally, I mean, I've got this lovely ash tree that we've got out the back. It's bare. Oh, well, the buds are just coming out now, but I can commune with that any time of year. But it just takes sometimes perhaps longer than other times. So when it is like asleep or resting, it is going to take longer. And also be mindful that just because you're connecting with tree doesn't mean that they always want to connect back. You may not get anything, and that's equally fine. That's about showing respect for the tree spirit, isn't it? And about saying, well, okay, it's happy for me to sit here and lean against the trunk, or just sit and have a bit of a rest, but it doesn't necessarily want to share anything with me, and I totally respect that, and I think that's part of the journey of learning about trees. So, and we've not even touched on all the physical aspects and attributes of the trees. This is just touching on the energetic level. So, somebody's got a lovely garden there by the sound of it. Oak, Green Village, Willow. Oh my goodness, you've got a decade's worth of work there, I think, Fiona, of working with that. That is lovely. And your new garden. Wow, lovely to have that. Willow and holly and ivy. I'm actually, I love the holly and ivy, and that I always make my own wreaths at Christmas with holly and ivy just from round about here. That's the other thing that I'm interested in. You've got that our willow looks like it needs TLC. Is when you are in the process of pruning, and this doesn't just go for trees. It's like goes for plants as well. It's just communicate that intention before you do it, so that the tree is aware that you are going to be cutting a branch, or a plant is aware that you're going to be pruning it, etc. When you're working with it, so you're working with them at every level, is just let them know what your intention is. And for example, the ash tree out the back, I wanted a piece, so I took an offering and did an exchange, so that so you can work with them in so many different ways. And it's a lovely relationship. It's about building a relationship, and just give it time, and you'll get to know the particular trees and around you. That's lovely. Thank you for that, Fiona.
Absolutely wonderful, Diana. You've done it again.
I'm going to keep quiet now, otherwise you'll get me back on another topic as well.
No, you did say you could talk about all 20 trees, so that's 2022.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Laurie. It's been a pleasure. I've loved it. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.
Thank you for the really interesting talk, and I get a lot of that. I really do. I just wonder myself with the energy exchange if we've got to learn that difference in timing, because a tree time is different to our time, whereas we're talking and we're responding immediately.
Yes.
Whereas with a tree.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, there is that. It's a very human thing, isn't it? We may have an inquiry and we expect like that, and it's just about. It may take 2 or 3 sessions, maybe, to connect with a tree and just communicate. I'm like, hello, I'm back again. Can we just sort of see whether you have anything for me today, and just allow that information to come to you when it does, and it will do.
Yeah, that's what I love when you had the sticks. I know that's not
right. Staves.
There you go. I wasn't far off. But you said work for a month with a tree, and that just clicked. I just thought, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not going to be the communication the way we understand.
No, definitely not. So, and that's a rudimentary level. And I'm fascinated about this New Zealand guy, whether he is still on that journey of doing a year a tree. I mean, wow.
But again, yeah, that's ideal, because you're going to see that tree through its whole life cycle whole seasonal.
A whole season, yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you very, very much. Don't cough.
Thank you. I've done too much talking, that's all.
Absolutely brilliant evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. What have we got coming up? We have tomorrow morning at 10:45 our Zoom, first of our divine services on the Sunday, with a lovely gentleman from down the West Country. And as you can tell by the way that I am sort of stalling for time, it's because I haven't got the right page up on the computer. Nearly got away with it. Ben Aylward. I could remember the first name, I couldn't remember the surname. Ben Aylward will be taking our Zoom service 10:45 tomorrow morning. In the afternoon, we have a live service here within the church. If you are local to the area, we would love to see you. If not, don't worry, you can watch it being streamed live on our Facebook page. And it's myself who will be taking that service. Monday evening at 7 p.m, And Saturday morning, we have our meditation times live on the Facebook page. Next Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the church Facebook page and the YouTube channel, we have our Spiritualism Lyceum evening. And this week we have Yvonne Nielsen from Denmark, who will be talking about unleashing your own inner power. I'm really looking forward to that because there's so many branches of spiritualism we can go into, but they all rely on the one common denominator, which is us. So we're going to be exploring the us aspect in spiritualism. Friday night, 7:30 p.m. on the Facebook page, we have another joint evening with our Spiritist friends. And next Saturday, our talk on the Facebook page at 7 o'clock will be with Inga Lisa from Sweden. And she's going to be sharing tips and topics about essential oils. So another full week coming up there and very varied. Back to our wonderful, wonderful guest. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Every time when the picture came on, I thought, oh yeah, I remember the drums and everything. It's so nice.
Bless you. Yeah. Thank you, Laurie. That is lovely.
And I'm looking at that carving in the corner and I'm saying, he's a handsome cat. Yeah.
Well, that carving was gifted to me from a lady that came and had some healing, and she was moving house and didn't have room to take it, and that was payment for some healing. And I thought, well, isn't that amazing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Have a peaceful evening. Remember what I say: don't worry if you can't change it. Don't worry about it because it's a waste of time. All right. Look after yourselves. Stay safe. Stay sane. Good night, everybody.